My name is Eliyahu Ben Zion. I have lived in New York since my teenage years, but my story begins much earlier, in the Holy Land of Israel, where I grew up as a rabbi. My mission was to teach divine laws and guide people on their paths. The Talmud and Torah were not just books to me, they were the foundation of my existence. My family shared these deeply rooted values. 6 years ago, on December 21st, 2018, my life changed forever. It was a Saturday night, filled with silence and the soft light of candles illuminating my home. Despite the blindness that had accompanied me for many years, I found comfort in God's teachings. My prayers, recited in unison with my brother, echoed in my soul and brought peace to my mind. However, this silence was suddenly interrupted by an unexpected incident. In a moment of inattention, I knocked over one of the Sabbath candles. It fell onto the tablecloth and immediately caught fire. Panic engulfed me. I tried to react, but my blindness prevented me from understanding the full seriousness of the situation. Instead of extinguishing the fire, I unintentionally spread it further. Smoke quickly filled the room, and each breath became heavier and painful. My chest tightened, and my heart seemed to be on the verge of tearing apart from the weight of despair. In that moment, when darkness overwhelmed me, I whispered my final prayer, spoken in Hebrew, and then everything went dark. The darkness that surrounded me was not just physical. It was a quiet, soulless wasteland, a vacuum that seemed to pull my soul into an unknown place. The darkness that enveloped me was unlike the blindness I had grown accustomed to. It was deeper, colder, and surrounded by complete silence. At that moment, I realized that my journey was just beginning. After losing consciousness, I awoke in a vast, undefined space. It was not a physical place, but its strangeness struck me like an icy knife. I couldn't tell if I was standing or falling. Around me was only chaos of moving shadows, approaching with a threatening presence, yet remaining unrecognizable. Suddenly, the gray darkness began to take on a reddish hue, and the heat became suffocating. This light awakened an irresistible sense of danger within me. The shadows took shape and became faceless beings whose voices spoke incomprehensible words, which echoed in my mind like waves full of anger and disappointment. Looking around, I noticed that my clothes were torn, exposing my complete vulnerability. The fear intensified because I had no idea what awaited me in this place. An invisible force pushed me forward, despite all my attempts to resist. Before me began to appear enormous doors. Each bore inscriptions representing various religions: Muslims, Buddhists, Christians, and many others. Each door pulsated with a threatening energy, showing a mix of darkness and fire beyond its boundaries. My body stopped before a door with the inscription Children of Israel. An irresistible force pulled me toward it, and despite my efforts, I could not break free. The door opened on its own, releasing suffocating darkness. Terrible sounds surrounded me. Screams and moans of pain echoed in eternity. As soon as I crossed the threshold, I was enveloped by unbearable heat, and paralyzing pain consumed my soul. With every step, I felt parts of myself being torn away. Then I understood where I was. This was hell, and my journey had only just begun. Before me stretched an immense, endless valley, from which piercing cries came, piercing my soul. I recognized familiar faces among the suffering souls, loved ones who seemed to recognize my presence but were overwhelmed with regret and suffering. Some souls crawled on the ground from flames that exploded with every movement, burning their flesh without fully destroying it. Others were pressed by massive stones, forever trapped in a cycle of suffering. I wanted to help them, but when I looked at my own hands, I saw that they were burning too. My skin cracked, scorched by the fire, but it never decayed. I was just as helpless as those around me. In the distance, towering columns of fire rose, representing the forces and wealth that once ruled lives. Among us, the suffering, I saw historical figures and well-known leaders, bankers, diamond traders, the rich, who placed their greed above their people. One of them approached me. His empty eyes reflected eternal torment, and his voice, distorted and trembling, echoed. We were the people of God, but we took his mercy for granted. Our arrogance blinded us, and our pride in our wealth led us to condemnation. Now we stand before his justice. But among the suffering were not only the rich. There were also religious leaders, rabbis, false prophets, and corrupt authorities who used their positions to lead people away from God. Their holy garments burned, just as mine did. At that moment, a terrible truth was revealed to me. I was one of them. A wave of fire engulfed me, burning my body without destroying it. The pain was unbearable and echoed in every cell, tearing at my soul. And then, against the backdrop of suffering, the final truth appeared. It didn't matter how much I had dedicated myself to the laws I had followed. I had rejected Jesus. I had also ignored God's plan of salvation. Shame and regret were heavier than any physical pain. The deeper I sank into this suffering, the more souls appeared around me, screaming in remorse. Each one cried, "We ignored the Messiah, we rejected him, and now we are perishing here. Oh, if only we could return." At the end of the valley, I reached the edge of a cliff. On the other side was an even darker and deeper abyss. The screams coming from there were indescribably terrifying, as if they belonged to souls that had lost the last spark of hope. I looked at the walls of the valley and saw the faces of souls who had broken God's laws and deceived their people. Their eyes, fixed on mine, seemed like silent accusations. Amid the endless torments, something awakened in my soul. Was there meaning in all this? Was I destined for the same eternal torment? Or was there a path to redemption? These questions tormented me as I continued my descent into hell. The atmosphere became more unbearable, not only because of the physical pain but also because of the weight of regret and shame that shook my soul. Now, before me stood not only those who had rejected the Messiah, but also those who had abused their faith to deceive others. Suddenly, a figure appeared before me. He was dressed in a rabbi's robe, but it was torn and almost burned. His face seemed melted, with dark pits where his eyes once were. Yet, his broken voice still carried traces of authority. "We are those who despised God's mercy on earth. We considered ourselves above. We refused to lead our people and rejected the Messiah. Look at what we are suffering now." His words pierced my soul. This was not only about him. This was about me too. For many years, I had rejected the Messiah and led my people to strict observance of traditions and laws. But what if that wasn't enough? What if I had been wrong all this time? The questions I had avoided throughout my life now began to fill with power. The figure extended his hand toward me. His fingers were surrounded by flame, but they did not burn. They seemed to symbolize the sins he carried. Slowly, he withdrew his hand and continued, "You are the same as us. The pride in your heart prevented you from hearing God's true call. We honored the laws, but we forgot our souls. We ignored the Messiah, and now we are here." These words pierced my soul like arrows. My inner conflict began here. I realized that my blindness was not only physical but also spiritual. My heart, too, was blind, closed off by pride. For years, I had mocked what was said about the Messiah. Now I understood how wrong I had been. I fell to my knees, overwhelmed with the deepest remorse. Tears, which seemed non-existent in this place, appeared to flow from my eyes. I muttered, "Shema Yisrael, Adonai Eloheinu, Adonai Echad." But this time, the prayer seemed insufficient. The figures around me began to disappear one by one. Their cries still echoed, but inside me remained only a staggering emptiness. All those years when I thought I deserved God's love now seemed like an illusion. I was completely broken, stripped of all my honor, reduced to deep regret. As I remained on my knees, exhausted and crushed, something extraordinary happened. A light appeared from the depths of darkness. It was faint, but it brought warmth to my heart. Even in this dreadful place, the light was comforting, like the last spark of mercy. I gathered my remaining strength and lifted my head. The light touched not only my eyes but also my soul. It was warm, salvific, and filled every part of the emptiness that once consumed my being. And in that moment, I realized that this light was God's final call to me, a unique opportunity, the last act of mercy. Then I looked at the source of the light. In the light appeared a figure unlike anything I had ever seen. His face was both a judge and full of compassion, as if he could see everything. My sins, my mistakes, my remorse, and even the remnants of goodness that still lived within me. My soul recognized his holiness before I even understood who he was. It was Jesus. He approached with a presence that radiated both authority and love. And his voice, the most beautiful I had ever heard, spoke deeply. "I see the good in your heart, Eliyahu. Your actions have brought healing to many families. Your prayers and your help strengthened the faith of many. But you have suffered here because you rejected me and ignored God's plan. However, mercy is in my hands, and I forgive you, for there is still light in you. If you return, accept this truth and understand God's salvation." With these words, Jesus showed me a vision of the good deeds I had done in my life. I saw a Christian family who had needed my help many years ago. I remembered how I offered them both material and spiritual support to help them through difficult times. Their children were able to continue attending church, and in doing so, their faith was strengthened. These small acts of kindness played an important role in God's plan. Jesus looked at me again, and his voice came with love and authority. "The light in you has not faded, but you could not see it. If you return, acknowledge this mercy and do not turn away from the truth again." These words awakened something deep within my soul. For the first time, I understood that Jesus was not only the Messiah for the Jewish people, but the Messiah for all humanity. The light that filled the darkness around me once again connected me to life. And then everything dissolved. Suddenly, I opened my eyes and felt the air once again fill my lungs. The faint echoes of screams from hell still lingered in my mind. But I had returned. I was in my bed, surrounded by doctors. I had survived. However, something in me had changed forever. At first, I tried to suppress what I had experienced. The darkness of hell, the light of Jesus, and his words remained deeply in my mind. But my old habits and deeply rooted traditions pulled me back. I told myself that it was perhaps just a hallucination, a product of the fear of death. I resumed my daily prayers and rituals, but something in me was already different. The emptiness grew in my heart, disrupting my peace. Jesus' words continued to echo in my soul. "Acknowledge the truth and do not stray from it." One night, when I tried to fully return to my old routine and forget this experience, something extraordinary happened. The darkness I had become accustomed to due to my blindness was suddenly pierced. It was as if the veil had been removed. An indescribable light filled my field of vision. It pierced not only my physical blindness but also the spiritual darkness that had engulfed my soul. At first, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. In my living room, where I had been surrounded by darkness for years, light finally shone. For the first time in years, I could see. My hands trembled as I looked around, absorbing the light in the room. But this was not just a physical miracle. Right in front of me, as a reflection of the light I had seen in hell, stood the figure of Jesus. His eyes met mine not with condemnation but with a gaze full of compassion and purpose. In that moment, I realized that no matter how much I had resisted, I could no longer deny the truth he embodied. His voice, calm and powerful, resonated deep within my soul. You have taken the first step toward me, but you still doubt. This is a sign for you. If you return, proclaim the truth. Do not stray from it again. His words penetrated my soul like a gentle but firm reminder. The image of Jesus slowly began to fade, leaving me alone in the room. But the miracle in my eyes and the peace in my heart sealed the truth I could no longer ignore. To reject his mercy and call would mean condemning my soul to eternal emptiness. This event became the beginning of a transforming journey. The blind man I once was now saw not only with his eyes but with his heart. My healing of sight was much more than a physical change. It became a symbol of spiritual awakening. From that day forward, I left behind my pride, stubbornness, and rejection of the Messiah. I accepted Jesus as my Savior and felt deep peace fill my heart, a peace I had never known. My transformation was not only internal but also extended to those around me. I shared my story with my family and grandchildren. At first, they were surprised and some expressed skepticism. But when they saw my spiritual world and my rebirth, something began to change within them too. I patiently worked to help them find the right path, guided by the same mercy that had touched me. This journey became not the end but the beginning of a new chapter, not only for me but for those who were ready to listen. The light that followed the darkness became a living symbol of the truth that God calls us to. I finally understood that even in the deepest darkness, God's light never fades. And where there is light, there is salvation, transformation, and eternal hope.